Well, it's that time of year. Rosie's been running around today putting up some Halloween decorations, some fall color. So fall has arrived at the lake. In fact, she told me today that today was one of 2 days a year when the amount of daytime and nighttime is equal, 12 hours exactly. Tomorrow it'll start shifting on towards the rainy season. And like me, the neighbor's trying to wrap up projects. So we'll be interrupted with the occasional sound of hammering, or a saw, or Rosie doing projects. She's out and about today. Good morning. Fall has arrived. We're early in October, which of course means Q4. Now, today's video, a little different. I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Brian. We're here at the lake. I'm with Cabin Fever. We're going to talk about some random eBay reseller topics. I noticed in my video clip section of my laptop, I've collected some random footage that doesn't really fit into a specific larger category. But I think it's all useful information, and it's a good way to kick off Q4 and fall. Before I go look for some of those loose clips to give you some other hints and tips about reselling as we enter fourth quarter, let's talk a little bit about the holidays. Q4. For a lot of people, that's the best time of year. Not just because Rudolph arrives, but because sales go up. Most years. I know fourth quarter's arrived because Rose has begun putting up scarecrows. She's got some pumpkins out behind me. I've had to reach for my fleece most mornings. The sun doesn't appear every day. They've turned the fountain off out in the lake. Some of the birds have begun migrating already. So Q4 is upon us. But as far as a reseller and Q4, if you haven't got your holiday inventory updated, it's time. It's past time for Halloween. Because as we roll into from September to October, you want to already have your Halloween items up. They've been in the retail stores in town for weeks already, and that's what you're competing with. So get them up now. If you've got holiday masks, if you've got Halloween pumpkins, blow molds, get that stuff. Move it to the front of the queue, get it photographed, get it up. And don't forget to go back and look at your existing listings that may have been held over from last Halloween or that you listed during the summer. If you're like me, we list randomly all year round. So if we happen to be processing a group and the group includes Christmas items or Thanksgiving items, we simply put them up with the rest of the group because the holidays do sell all year round. Christmas, Thanksgiving and Christmas. Yeah, now is the time you should go back through your death pile, or whatever you call it, and if you know you picked up some items during the summer but haven't dealt with them, and they're holiday, either directly holiday related or thought of at holiday, those are the items to get listed now as we enter Q4. And I'm not just talking about, the Christmas ornaments and the Thanksgiving banners that hang like flags outside your door. Those are good items to have up as early as you can get them up. But I'm also talking about the things people tend to think about. Christmas wrapping. A few weeks ago, I picked up a whole big load of Christmas because I wanted the totes. It came from a local auction. That video is up in the playlist as well. I'm comparing 3 auctions. I called them Manny, Mo, and Jack. And one of them, I bought a big Christmas lot. Well, it's time to break that stuff out and have someone like Rose or my daughter Brandy sort it. Take the items they want for themselves, take the items they can give to their friends, give me the empty totes because that's why I bought the lot, and take a look and see whether it's anything in those groups suitable for the holidays. Because if people are going to be out buying expensive, fancy ribbon spools, why not have them buy yours? But they're also going to start thinking about gifting. When they show up to have Thanksgiving dinner at someone's house, they're going to want to take something. They're going to want to give a presento to the hostess. Think about things you may have in your inventory that are good holiday gift items. Make sure they're priced competitively if you've already got the listing up. Make any changes if you are a flat rate shipper like I am. Make sure that you know the post office is going to be raising rates any day now. So make sure your shipping accurately reflects what you need to get to send those items off. If you're a eBay calculated shipping person, it'll cover it. When the rate goes up, eBay may lag a little bit, but they're not too bad at catching the rate increases. Think about items for the holidays that are going to be given to children, going to be given to parents, going to be given to friends and coworkers. If you've got, those little coffee cups with the Hershey's Kisses in them that say best coworker ever, those are the things you need to be getting up because folks will be looking to buy them. And if you can make the combination of your shipping price because you acquire less expensive shipping, if you can make your total price, shipping plus the item, equal or exceed what's out in town or what's on the other platforms or what your competitors are selling for, you have a good chance at selling. Best time of the year. Think about your inventory. Look back through your old listings. Update them. Get the stock out of your dead pile that makes fantastic gifts. Last night I had an interesting event. I had sold a single Porsche coffee cup to a gentleman. Got good money. It'll eventually feature in some packing video or something. But selling the cup isn't what was interesting. As Rose and I were watching a little bit of BBC last night, her phone dinged. The message said, "You should have packed the Porsche cup in a box. It arrived broken." And Rose looked over at me and said, "You did use a box, didn't you?" And I said, "Sure, I send all coffee cups, all singles, in boxes." And she showed me a picture, and across the room, it looked like he'd used blue tissue paper too. So of course I immediately knew that I was getting some feedback on something I didn't sell, which is pretty good if you could get paid for something you didn't sell. But in this case, I figured the buyer was simply confused. And before I even had a chance to send him out a note telling him, please send me back a photo of the packaging and the tracking number, I got a second message that said, oops, please disregard. It was a different coffee cup that arrived broken. So it happens. Over the years, I have found that I've even received neutral or negative feedback for items I didn't sell. And the clue normally is in their text. They'll say this widget arrived broken or damaged. And you look at it and you say, well, I never sold one of those. So you go back to him and you say, I think you have me confused with a different product you purchased. Please check, confirm that. I'm here to help. And then please remove your feedback. And that's usually all there is to it. I think once I've had to go out to eBay and say, it's not the item I sold him, please remove the feedback. And they did. Yeah, those make selling interesting. Cases where you get some feedback for something you didn't even do. We're also going to take a few minutes and look at eBay's Fall Seller Newsletter. And I've got a separate clip for that. Several of these I'll be inserting some random clips.
October, so the eBay Seller News has arrived. Not too much in it this time. Looks like 3 topics are being discussed. This one, of course, doesn't really apply to me because I fully trust my partner of 50 years. But this shows you how to let other people into your account if you have employees to do tasks. This one relates to the change eBay made this summer, where they're trying to put fitment data into the eBay motor selling aspects. And I've got a video up on that topic. I did it right after they came out with that change. We'll get into this one a little bit. I've got some photos because it is all about trust. But in this case, they're talking about eBay buyers or potential buyers trusting you. My concern more is, do I trust eBay to put in accurate fitment data for car parts? And this is relevant because I have a couple of bins of new old stock car parts over in agate, and as I work this winter to clear agate to sell it, I'll be looking at that. We're talking car distributors, new brake pads. This is all on open stock, so I'll be listing that. But the question comes back to, is it better for me to simply put out the part numbers and information that's on the box and let the buyer decide if it fits his car so that I don't get a return? Or do I trust eBay to accurately provide a list of makes and models to the buyers? Because ultimately, every other instance like this, no matter what eBay inserts into the listing, the seller is ultimately responsible for the data. That's one of the problems with eBay's AI descriptions. It puts in all this fluff about what it's made out of and who needs it and what it is. And especially if the item is open box or there is no packaging, how do you validate what the AI is just randomly throwing in? And it's one of the reasons we don't use AI for descriptions. All right, and then you've got your ambassador program. They want you to join it so you can start earning commissions for putting your listings across social channels. And we don't really use social channels much. We do a little selling on Facebook, and Rose is hooked in with all the ladies groups. In fact, that's where she is this morning. She's out playing cards with some ladies. I just had to fix a card shuffling machine, take it apart and put a little gear back on so that she would have it, because they play with multiple decks in whatever this game is. But that's the seller news update.
Yeah, let's take a look at the next item that's happening this week. Rose's Kia, the little brown toaster, had a fast blinking turn signal. And I took it apart, cleaned it, put it back together, and it seems to be working. But in the interim, the most likely cause is a bad bulb. Front turn signal, amber. Coincidentally, today I sold an amber motorcycle light. So amber and fall seem to be the theme. But the interesting thing about this item is that it came packed in a bubble mailer. Yeah, who packs a light bulb in a bubble mailer and actually expects the thin glass to survive the trip? Well, it did survive the trip, but I also noticed that he actually sent a return label along with it, so all of his bulbs must not survive. And that's one of the challenges with selling low price point items like this. Personally, I would have at least wrapped it in some bubble, maybe threw an air pocket or two in so the air pockets took the crush if it happened instead of the bulbs. But that brings me up to this motorcycle light. This is an old part. It's not in the best of shape. I described it and I'll show you. The pitted chrome. You can see there's some electrical tape on the wire. But this is definitely a vintage made in Japan motorcycle turn signal. I listed it as parts, and there's a new parts and repair policy up from eBay, or an amendment to the old one, and I did a video on that this week, and it's in the playlist. I said untested, and that's one of the decisions you've got to make if you sell electrical, electronics, things that have motion, things that move, things that speak. You've got to decide, how much do you test for your expected payback on the item, because you're going to consume time doing the testing. And to some extent, unless you can fully test it and you're ready to stand by and video it, say blinking, or at least on, you still can't really convince the buyer that it works fully. And in this case, with a one wire light like this is the supply wire, the hot. The actual chrome metal piece here, the threaded rod, is the ground. So if you wanted to test something like this, you would literally have to take it to a car battery. You would have to touch this on the positive and this on the negative, and it should light if the bulb is good. Now, sometimes when the wire is short, you might have to put on a jumper wire or an alligator clip wire to another alligator clip. But if you don't feel like taking the time to go down and open a hood of a car, or you have a spare battery somewhere around your shop, you can sell these as untested. Because in this case, the bulb inside is common. In fact, it's probably a smaller version of one of these. And it's the hardware the gentleman or lady wants. So saying untested is not a problem because he probably half expects to change the bulb anyway. All right, so we sold this, and of course we'll pack ours in a box. So this week, eBay introduced a promise change on the topic of selling items for parts and repair. Now on the surface, this looks like a positive change, and it is, but there are some limitations with it that don't seem obvious when you first read it. The first is that the item has to be in a category that already has a condition code of parts and repair. And that's not all across the board. There are many categories for items I want to list as parts and repair, but it's not there. My only choice is when I make the listing, new or used. Sometimes you get new other, or new open box, but you don't get a chance to say parts and repair. So right there's a limiting factor about this policy change. A couple of years back, the topic of how best to remove the little pricing labels on stock came out, and somebody invented something called the Scotty peeler. It came up recently, and I was asked if I owned a Scotty peeler, and I don't. What I've got are some other tools that predate the Scotty peeler for getting those labels off. And when I take a label off, I often decide to put a little bit of fluid on there as well, depending on what the surface is. And if it's a cardboard box, especially a vintage old cardboard box without the glossy surface, it's going to likely try to suck up whatever it is you apply in the way of liquid. So choosing your liquid carefully is important. But here are some of the tools I use that are similar to, but not Scotty peelers. Here's an interesting plastic roller tool. It was probably a map cartographer type tool, but it has a point similar to a Scotty peeler. Here's another one. This one is a window spudge. A glazer would use this to get the rubber seal off and to get the sticky residue off. This one happens to be Libby Owens Ford. Right. But I used to have a bunch of these because a friend of mine before he passed away was a glazer, and he gave them to me because they'd get them so often from their vendors. And it's got a point, a narrow flat spot that allows you to kind of rub up the sticker. Then you've got to get the residue off. But even more common are putty knives. Plastic, metal. The metal one, you've got to be a little careful because these sharp metal corners can tear up the product. On one of my other ones, I've actually rounded this slightly with a file, and that softens it. And here's a plastic one. And you can do the same thing. If you think the corners are a little sharp, you can just take a file, a piece of sandpaper, something like that, and round the corners. But because they come down to a fairly thin point, they can also help you get the label up. And they're common household items. So it's not that a Scotty peeler is all that expensive. It's just that in an operation like mine anyway, you've got to have several of them. Any place you clean product, any place you de-sticker, get ready for photograph, you'd have to have another one. And you don't want to get into the mindset where I've got to stop what I'm doing and go find the Scotty peeler. Opening packages, opening bundles. I've just ordered my Q4 branded shipping supplies, so when they come in, some will arrive in boxes, some will arrive in bundles, and we'll be opening them up and restocking. So this is your common utility knife. Takes blades like this. They come in replaceable packs. And I keep these around the benches because I've got them. I've pulled them out of storage units over the years, got them in random lots. As an alternative, though, a few years ago, this style was created. Uses the same blade, folds up in a much more compact manner, and is safer. So I can carry these around on the job when I'm mobile in my pocket without worrying about cutting myself. Because some of these, if you bump it, it opens and you can take an injury. In fact, some of the really old ones, they don't retract. The blade just always sticks out. And I don't keep those around because it's easy to get hurt. On the topic of cleaning and preparing items for Q4, I keep a lot of these sash brushes around. They're great for dusting off fine things, getting into cracks and crevices, and cleaning. And of course, in addition to my regular household shears, all of my benches have one of these old vintage antique sets of Taylor shears, because the longer it is, the more accurately you can cut. And I've got fairly large hands, so you can see even this pair I can only get 3 fingers in. But the small ones, I can only get 2 fingers in. But here a nice tight cutting edge. And these all do have adjustable. A lot of the modern ones, they've got a pin here. So as they wear and they flex and open, you can't do anything with them and they lose their ability to cut nicely. So I have one of these at all my benches. I've pulled them out of storage units and auction lots over the years, and I just kept the ones I wanted. Let's take a minute and talk a little bit about tape, because one of the things I ordered this week is some more tape. Now, years back, before eBay branded shipping supplies, I used to order this type of tape in addition to the clear. And I did this for reusing boxes. I would put a layer of this on to obscure the branding. Now, there are some boxes the post office just doesn't want you to ship unless you cover them. Alcohol, tobacco, those type of things. And when I used them years back, I would simply cover over the branding, and then the post office would accept them. Now, of course, I use the eBay branded shipping tape. And it's fine. I wouldn't buy this without the store subscription, though, because it's one of the topics that got me holding this tape up. When I went to order my eBay branded shipping supplies this week, I've got 3 stores. So I've got 3 coupons. And I think elsewhere in a video I showed you how to find the discount code if you have an eBay store. And how much of a discount code you're given, the amount monetarily, depends on which level of store. And eBay has like 5 levels now. When you get the first one, I don't think you get any discount. But we've got some mid-sized stores, because once our listing count climbed high enough, it made sense to get a store and use the free listings. They're not really free, but they call them free listings. And then, of course, during the COVID timeframe, they upped your listing availability to like 10,000 before you started paying a per listing charge. Your other route, of course, is to not have a store, no subscription, and pay per listing. But at some point, depending on how large you intend to grow, you will want to get a store. It has some other benefits besides reducing your listing count, and one of them happens to be the coupon to buy eBay branded shipping supplies. But as I went into the eBay store and I looked around, because it changes from quarter to quarter, and the coupons come out quarterly. So as soon as you go over into, say, October 1st, I start thinking about, I better do a stock check on my packing supplies and decide what I need going into Q4. Because having your shipping supplies standing by as you enter Q4, if it's a bigger time of year for you to sell, is important. My newest store only gives me a $25 coupon. The others give me $50 coupons. But I looked around and there was almost nothing in the store that you could buy with a $25 coupon. I think you could get a 6-pack of tape, which is what I used it for. But there's almost nothing. They have, one of the annoying things about that coupon is, for one, they're charging you quite a bit per item as they consume the coupon. But they've set up the amounts so that they come out at like 33, 42. So if you've got a $25 coupon, you're going to burn through that and have to kick more money in. And I've often said to people that the amount you kick in is about what you'd pay if you went out to eBay and you found another vendor or a local supplier who didn't have to charge shipping and bought unbranded items direct. eBay is just expensive, and they offset that by giving you the coupon. So if I didn't have a coupon, I wouldn't buy eBay branded. So there you are. You got a $25 coupon. The cheapest things you might want to get typically are $33 or $42 or something like that. So you're kicking in some extra. The flip side of that is if you go to spend your $50 coupon and you double up, you say, I want more of something to take advantage of the slight discount in volume. Well, then you're using $42 of a $50 coupon and you lose the other $8 or $10. So they've set the pricing points out to be darn inconvenient to use the coupons they then tell you they're giving you as such a good thing. So anyway, watch your pricing, use your coupons to offset, get your eBay branded shipping supplies when it makes sense. But I tell you, most of the tape I use these days is just clear. You know, I've tried tape like my go-to tape, and I don't think it performed any better than the regular tape. But tape, the way you buy it, width and thickness. So as you look at this, they sell it to you by the mill. So if you want thicker, heavier, better quality tape, you're going to order a thicker mill. If you need wider tape, because I also keep 3-inch tape around, though I don't use it all that much. Big boxes when I'm shipping UPS or FedEx, I'll use the heavier tape. Now, the other third factor is roll length, because you'll notice some rolls have half the tape on them as others. So it looks like you're getting, say, a case of tape or a 12-pack, and you're like, oh, that's a great price. And then you realize you're getting less on the roll linearly. So watch width, tape thickness, and roll length. Those are your factors. Now sometimes we'll actually use this blue painter's tape. It comes in green too, comes in yellow. But if it's called painter's tape, it tends to not stick as much. So if you're going to stick something on a product, and I recommend against that, but if you're going to actually tape to a product, not to packaging, but to a product or to a box that the product came in, use painter's tape because it will come off easier. So I keep that around. Tape tools. You've probably seen this one. Most content creators who are resellers have these tape dispensers. And again, they come in widths. So you can have them for your standard tape. You can have them for 1-inch tape. You can have them for 3-inch tape. This is the only size I keep around because I tend to only use tape off of these dispensers when I'm at my packing bench and I need a little piece. I'm already holding something with one hand. I need a little piece of tape. So it's heavy enough, it sits there, I can pull it, and I have a little piece of tape. The rest of the time, I just take it off the roll like this. Other people prefer tape dispensers. Yeah, the big bulky tape guns. Yeah, I've got them around, but I don't use them. They take up too much space on the bench. This is an alternative. You can buy these preloaded with a roll, but you're going to pay up per inch of tape. Right? Some people swear by tape guns, but if I'm not putting together big boxes for, say, packing out a storage unit, I have no use. And I tend to use totes anyway, rather than boxes to pack out storage units. All right, next item. This one actually relates to photography. A little pencil eraser. And you're thinking, well, that's a terrible eraser. And it is if you were going to use it to erase. If I'm erasing, say, pencil marks inside of vintage and antique books, I use a gum eraser. I think it's easier on the pages. What I use this one for is to take pictures. If I'm photographing something like a coffee cup and I want the logo in a particular direction and I have the cup sideways, say I'm actually trying to keep the glare off the cup, photograph the image, I will actually use this like a wedge, and it's small enough that you don't see it in the photo, but it does a good enough job to hold that so you can photograph it. So anyway, it's a little tip. And what I'm using to simulate a coffee cup are these. Ground transportation only. And they've got a no airplane. And these were more important when before Ground Advantage came along and you were shipping a lot of small items priority, because priority items can go on a plane. By its very nature, they tend to send ground transport items ground, but they can put them on a plane. It's up to the post office. So when you have an item, and it usually falls into the hazmat category, things like lithium batteries, perfume, those are common. If you're allowed to ship them, and you are allowed to ship many of them, there's a whole table in the rules about how to ship it, how much of it in a single box you can ship. Well, in addition to the shipping label, I will peel off a couple of these and I will stick them on, so that my liability was, don't put it on an airplane. Because that's one of the things when you go curbside service and you have the post office come, down near the bottom, and I've got a video up on curbside service and the USPS website. I've got a few of them up. So if you need more info, take a look at those videos. But they basically try to make you responsible if you put something hazardous in a box, dropped it in the post office carrier's hands, or took it to the mailbox, and they don't ask you what's in it. You're basically, by ticking the little box on the bottom of the form, you're acknowledging that you've read and understand the rules about shipping this stuff. And this is one of those little ways you can say, well, I did my part. You guys ignored this and put it on a plane. So the problem that resulted isn't really my problem. So we were discussing Scotty peelers and similar tools. And we were talking about liquids. Here are a couple of products that are supposed to help you get stickers. If you read this, it says it's good for drips and splatters, glue, adhesive, and sticker residue, as well as candle wax. Several companies put these out. These just happen to be two brands, and they usually start with either Goof Off or Goo Gone. All right, this is the one I keep in the house, and it's in a cup along with a little tiny rag because I'll use it sometimes. It also comes in sprays like this. That's not an endorsement for any particular product, and I get nothing if you go out and find these. But my approach to stickers is quite straightforward. I start, same way with marks. If you got Sharpie marks, stickers, gummy residue, old tape residue, I try to use the least invasive method that is least likely to damage the product. Now, the first question, though, before picking a product is, should you even bother to remove the sticker? All right, that's a point of view question. If the sticker is old, say it's an original retailer sticker, and the item you're selling is 30 or 40 years old, well, it doesn't really matter what the price is on that sticker. Because if anything, it goes towards the provenance, proving where it came from or how old it is. So I leave them. I'll even photograph them, especially if it has any useful information like part numbers or the store name, and that store hasn't been in business for 20 years. Because the price on the sticker is pretty much irrelevant to what you're going to ask for the item. And it's the least amount of work. Leaving the sticker alone, it's zero risk that you'll create more damage, it's zero work, and it might actually help sell the item. That's option one. Then you move on to the, well, by God, I'm going to remove that sticker, or I'm going to remove that Sharpie mark. You've got to decide how you're going to go about it. And Scotty peelers are one method. I like to use a very thin single edge razor blade sometimes. If I think the material can hold up to it, I'll put a little dot of something like the goo off or the goof off, and then I'll get down at a shallow angle and I'll slide the blade underneath it. And then as I clean up the goo off or goo gone, it will remove that last little bit of residue. But some people aren't steady-handed enough. They'll actually cut a little into the product as they do that. So, that's a trade-off question. But all these products, goo off, goo gone, they come in two basic forms. I like the citrus-based ones. It's not so much a chemical. It's not so harsh, doesn't smell so bad, isn't so oily, right? Because again, you don't want to stain the product. You really want something that will evaporate and leave a clean surface. Some people like isopropyl alcohol, and it comes in a couple of different strengths, but you'll find isopropyl alcohol in many bathrooms and at almost all chain stores for pharmacies. And it's great for electronics because it evaporates. It doesn't leave a residue. Back when I repaired electronics, micro miniature soldering and that type of thing, alcohol was what we used to clean up residue like resin, soldering resin, and to clean contacts. When I was cleaning Rose's light bulbs for a car the other day, I used an eraser, but alcohol would have been a good choice as well on a little clean cloth. But it doesn't remove everything. Alcohol can remove some ink stains. It can remove some residue. And when you step up from alcohol, you've got products like this. Now this is a quart of acetone. Don't leave the lid off if you're in an enclosed space. Get a little out, put it on a Q-tip, put it on a clean rag, at least set the lid back on top so that it's not getting out into the air. Many of you ladies may be familiar with acetone because it's the primary ingredient in many fingernail polish removers, hairspray, right? So acetone. So if you've got those ink marks, hairspray if it's handy, and fingernail polish removal, they work similar to acetone. Try them out in an area that isn't visible to make sure they're not going to discolor or stain the product. If you rub acetone long enough on some of these boxes with the glossy finish, it'll start to remove the glossy finish. It'll start to remove the information off the labels. So if you're just trying to clean around a price tag and you're leaving that price tag, or say you've got a CD with an overlay that says it's a special bonus edition, if you rub too much with some of these products, you'll start removing the ink you don't want to. Febreze. I'll shoot this sometimes onto the lids of the totes before I store the totes. It's a wet product, so again, I don't put a product in wet. But what I will do sometimes is I'll either spray a little bit on the lids, or I'll spray it on the product and then let the product dry before I put it away. Similar to dryer sheets. Rose likes to use the fabric dryer sheets to put them in bins with things like old books, that type of thing. Now, if you're a serious bookseller of old and vintage books and they've got that musty smell, that basement or attic smell, there are ionizing machines. My son-in-law has one. And you end up smelling, the books end up smelling a bit like ozone in my opinion, but it's still better than the musty old cardboard smell. But those machines are a bit more expensive. It's like the difference between just wiping down a CD or a DVD and actually putting it in a disc cleaner. The type that spins like a bread machine and repolishes the CDs. So you've got to make sure that the product justifies the equipment you're buying. And you'll notice there's not a lot of expensive equipment here. Most of these are common household items. Last thing before I go on to another topic is measuring. These are common tape measures. Lay one alongside something, you'll be able to show its length. And for certain products, like flat lay measurements on clothing, the length of an industrial part, these are fine. You can usually lock them and they'll stay open, and as long as you can visibly read the numbers next to the object, you're good to go. But I actually don't prefer these for most things. I will instead pick a steel rule because they'll lay flat. You don't have to hold them. You just simply lay it there. I especially like this, a 6-inch one for a challenge coin. But they come in longer models too. I've got some that are 16 inches, 18 inches, and they're really good for things like knives, because you can lay the rule down, then you can place the knife and you can place the sheath, and you can get one single photo where they're all visible in the image. For flat lay measurements, Rose prefers the now less common yardstick. You used to be able to get these just about anywhere. They gave them away at furniture stores. They gave them away at places like Home Depot. Now you probably have to buy one or find one at a yard sale. A yardstick at a yard sale? I've got a couple that are actually 42 inches long. So they're over-length yardsticks. But we use these, and if you get a few of them, you can take all of your flat lay measurements in one photograph. You know, you can run one down the sleeve, one across the waistline, one showing the vertical length from neck to hem. Yeah, you can do more with fewer photos, which saves you time. So yardsticks, this is how we tend to deal with clothing. Random acts of reselling. Hope you enjoy it. Thank you.